Even after all these years, I can still picture that night as clearly as if it happened yesterday. It started off just like any other Saturday evening. We were having dinner at home, nothing fancy, just the usual, and Rachel was with us, as she often was on weekends. Back then, her mom and Dora, who I hadn't met yet, worked long shifts dispatching cabs every Friday and Saturday night. Rachel and my daughter Otterly had been practically inseparable since their high school days, so having Rachel stay over was normal. Routine, even. Most weekends, she crashed at our place while her mom was working. Marjorie, my wife at the time, knew Andorra well enough, but she'd made sure I never crossed paths with her. I didn't think much of it then, but later I realized Marjorie had been worried I might take a bit too much interest in the beautiful Andorra. Typical Marjorie. Back then, I spent a lot of time traveling for work, helping a young company try to carve out a foothold in an already crowded market. Since I was gone so often, Marjorie usually handled all the school pickups and drop-offs. On Sundays, Rachel usually took a cab home, and the drivers would often spoil her with candy or snacks. Treats she and Otterly would giggle over and split between them. That night, the four of us were still at the table, just finishing up dinner. Marjorie had just brought out dessert, and I'd stepped into the kitchen to clear a few plates. I'd barely sat back down when Marjorie, with absolutely no warning, said, "Pete, I want a divorce. I'm leaving." She delivered it with all the emotion of someone reading off a weather forecast. "What?" was all I could manage. After a decade of marriage, you don't expect to hear something like that over apple pie. But she just repeated it, calm as could be. "I met someone else. I want to be with him." I was stunned into silence, made worse by the fact that two 8-year-olds were sitting at the same table, watching and listening to every word. Somehow, I managed to hold myself together. To this day, I'm still proud of that. I sat there, brain trying to catch up, until I mumbled something along the lines of, "Guess I'd better start looking for an apartment." I barely remember what I said. It was all just a blur. Marjorie, ever practical, shook her head. "You'll need to stay here for Otterly," she said, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Then, without so much as glancing up from her dessert, she casually announced her big plan, a months-long trip around the world. Apparently, since Otterly had school, Marjorie felt it was better to leave her behind. I just stared at her, my ice cream melting into a puddle. "You can't be serious," I said, louder than I meant to. But I kept my temper in check, not for Marjorie's sake, but for the girls. Marjorie, in her usual detached way, explained she wanted to see the world while she was still young enough to enjoy it. The irony of that statement stung. When we first got together, I was the one obsessed with travel. My plan was to finish my engineering degree, explore the world for a few years, then settle down. But Marjorie wanted kids right away. "While I'm young enough to enjoy them," she used to say. Apparently, her definition of enjoying life had taken a sharp turn. It all felt too surreal to process, so I went outside to clear my head. I found myself in the garden, pruning the roses just to keep my hands busy. Before long, I noticed Rachel and Otterly had quietly joined me, each tending to their own bush without a word. "Careful with the thorns," I said automatically. "We know, Dad," Otterly replied, her voice calm, too calm. I glanced over at her. "What's your mom doing?" I asked, mostly to break the silence. "Packing," she answered, like it was the most normal thing in the world. Anger welled up inside me, but I pushed it down. Marjorie wasn't just leaving me, she was walking out on Otterly, too. I couldn't understand how any mother could do that. "I'm sorry, kiddo," I said softly. "Why are you apologizing? You didn't leave." She did. Otterly's voice was steady, too mature for her age. "Most kids at school, it's their dads who take off. I'd rather have a dad who loves me than a mom who—" She didn't finish the sentence, and I never pushed her to. I stood there watching them, the two of them now working together on the same rosebush, holding hands as they moved. From the open window above us, I could hear Marjorie's voice, probably talking to her new man. I knew the girls could hear her too. "Who's up for ice cream?" I suddenly announced. We'd just had dessert, but it didn't matter. I needed to get them out of there. They cheered and raced for the car, and I followed, each of them grabbing one of my hands. Instead of stopping for soft serve, I took them to a proper diner and let them order the biggest sundaes on the menu. They ate fast, faster than I expected. While they dug in, my brain finally started piecing things together. Marjorie was gone, and strangely, I didn't even feel sad about it. Whatever love I'd felt for her had evaporated the second she said those words in front of our daughter. The real problem was practical. How was I supposed to juggle work and raising a child on my own? School got out at 3, my job didn't end until 5, and there were holidays to think about. Who was going to help? Rachel was Andora's concern, but I cared about her too. I knew I'd have to call Andorra soon to explain what was happening. For now, I only had one option. My sister, Carol. She might be able to handle school pickups, though it would be a lot to ask. I called her, hoping for some ideas. The second she picked up, her voice was already suspicious. What did Marjorie do? I gave her the short version, keeping my voice low with the girls right there. Even as I explained, I realized how little I knew. No clue how long the affair had been going on or who this guy even was. Some guy named Ronald utterly chimed in from across the table, startling me. He comes to the library all the time, Rachel added helpfully. Marjorie had been working part-time at the library, supposedly to make extra cash. Turns out she'd been getting a lot more than a paycheck. Figures, Rachel said, her tone dry, as though that explained everything. I repeated what the girls said to Carol, still trying to wrap my head around it. But my bigger concern was school pickup. Carol, I can get Otterly to school, but there's no way I can leave work early every day to pick her up. It's fine, Dad, Otterly said brightly. Rachel's mom's going to pick us up. I blinked. Honey, we can't expect her to do that every day. It's okay, Rachel and I already worked everything out. Otterly flashed me a proud smile. Rachel nodded, a little too pleased with herself. Somehow, these two had managed to coordinate a whole plan behind my back. Rachel will stay with us on weekends, and I'll stay at her house during the school week. You'll take us to school on Mondays, and Rachel's mom will pick us up after she's had her nap. I must have looked stunned because Carol, overhearing, said, Honestly, Pete, I think it's a great plan. Did you even ask Rachel's mom? Carol asked. No, I admitted. Somehow that part hadn't crossed my mind. I'd never even met the woman. Rachel chimed in again. Mom's been thinking about taking Sunday shifts at the cab company, but she didn't want to ask your wife to babysit me. I pieced together the rest. Rachel's mom was probably juggling jobs, barely sleeping, and now she might end up helping with Otterly too. The woman must have been exhausted. Carol chimed in. Sounds like the girls already solved your problem. Carol then asked, What does Rachel's mom even look like? I have no idea. I've never met her, I replied carefully, aware that the girls were hanging on to every word. Well, Carol said, you better introduce yourself soon and make sure she's actually okay with all this. Shifting the conversation, Carol asked, Has Marjorie cleared out yet? No clue, I said. The girls and I are still out. She was packing when we left. Get new locks, Pete, Carol said firmly. Don't let her waltz back in. Before hanging up, Carol offered to come by with her husband and kids if I needed support. I told her I'd be fine. The real help I needed was already sitting across the table eating sundaes. The girls exchanged grins and high-fived. I'd see that little gesture a lot in the months ahead, though at the time I had no clue just how much they were plotting together. One thing became clear. Carol wasn't surprised Marjorie left, not even a little. She saw it coming long before I did. After the ice cream, we drove around a bit. I wasn't ready to go home yet. I had one more thing to take care of. I needed to meet Rachel's mom and make sure she was okay with the girls' sleepover scheme, and that she was comfortable with me being the only adult at home. I pulled up at the cab office and left the girls in the car. Inside, I asked for Rachel's mom, still not knowing her actual name. Marge and Otterly always called her Rachel's mom, and Rachel just called her Mom. The moment I said her name, every driver in the room glanced at me, then awkwardly looked away. She's in her office, one driver said, nodding toward a door with a ladies-only sign, covered by a handwritten note, Andora's office. I stood there, trying not to look uncomfortable while the drivers pretended not to stare. When the door opened, I was stunned. I hadn't known what to expect, but the woman who walked out was nothing like I imagined. She wasn't dressed up, just well-worn jeans and a fitted blouse. But she had that effortless beauty some women just have. Even tired from work, she looked incredible. Her makeup was subtle, her hair perfect, and she carried herself like someone with far too much grace for a cab dispatcher's office. No wonder the drivers were hanging around. Andorra, someone's here for you, the driver said. She saw me and smiled warmly. Hey, Pete, something wrong? Sort of, I said, suddenly aware of our audience. Rachel's fine. It's nothing like that. Can we talk somewhere private? The drivers started to get up to give us space, but Andorra waved them off and led me outside. You look like you've had a day, she said with a teasing smile, waving to the girls who were peeking out the car window. Andorra, I started, still not comfortable using her first name. Marjorie left me. Her expression shifted instantly from friendly to sympathetic. Oh, Pete, I'm so sorry. She paused, then asked, Wait, does that mean there's a childcare issue tonight? No, I said quickly. I just thought it was important to let you know I'd be the only adult with the girls tonight. I figured that might matter since we've never actually met. We're not exactly strangers, she said with a smile. Rachel talks about you constantly. You may not realize it, but she thinks of you like a second dad. She even keeps a picture of you next to one of my late husband. Surprised, I asked, Where did she get that? Otterly must have given it to her, Rachel's mom replied. Before I could respond, she added, Would you like me to take the night off and keep the girls with me instead? No, absolutely not, I said firmly. The girls have been keeping me sane all day. I just wanted to make sure you were comfortable with it. Rachel's in good hands with you, Pete, she said softly, reaching over to squeeze my hand. I'll pick her up in the morning. There's no rush, I said. You need your sleep. We'll work it out, she said with a small smile. The girls already seem to have half the plan figured out. We walked back to the car, where Andorra gave the girls a quick hug and reminded them to behave. When we got home, I noticed a strange car in my driveway. Marjorie stepped out the front door, arms crossed, looking annoyed. Where have you been? I've been waiting for hours, she snapped, like she had any right to be angry. I ignored her and glanced at the car. Is that who I think it is? Tell him to get his car out of my driveway before I move it myself. She gave a dismissive wave, and the car pulled out onto the street. I parked in the empty space, making sure to block the driveway. You almost hit me, she whined. Oh, are you still here? I said, heading for the door. I stopped just long enough to ask, Aren't you taking your car? It hit me. The Jaguar was stuffed with Marjorie's things, but the Nissan sat completely empty. Sell it, she shrugged. We're flying out Wednesday. Where to? I asked, already planning where to send the divorce papers. But Marjorie was ahead of me. Ronnie's lawyer's contact is on the kitchen table. He can reach us. She turned to speak to Otterly, who was out of the car with Rachel by then. I didn't stick around. Whatever was said must not have been important because both girls followed me inside without a word. As the door closed behind us, I caught the faint slap of their hands. Another secret high five. I didn't think much of it at the time. The three of us settled on the couch, watched some TV, and when I called bedtime, they headed upstairs without a single complaint. A first for Otterly. I had a couple of whiskeys before bed, but I couldn't tell you what time I finally turned in. Sunday morning, the smell of bacon woke me. For a blissful second, I thought Marjorie was cooking breakfast. Then, reality hit. Something felt off, though. I soon realized. The half-open drawers and closet doors from the night before were now closed. Not just closed, empty. Every trace of Marjorie was gone. Even her family photos were missing. The bathroom was cleared out, too. While I slept, someone, and I could only think of two possible culprits, had wiped all evidence of her away. Come on, Dad! Breakfast is ready, Otterly called from downstairs. In the kitchen, the girls proudly served me eggs, fries, orange juice, and coffee, like I was in some fancy hotel. They settled for cereal and tea. I gave the expected compliments, earning beaming smiles from both. Before we finished eating, Carol, Frank, and their kids arrived. And somehow the girls had already set out coffee cups for them. The girls ran off to play while Carol started washing dishes and Frank and I talked. As I filled them in, they promised to help however they could. Frank also gave me the contact info for his sister's divorce lawyer, a recommendation that would prove invaluable. Carol made dinner from whatever she found in the fridge while I spent most of the day outside pruning my roses, often joined by Otterly and Rachel. At one point, Rachel absent-mindedly quoted a line from It's Been a Good Year for the Roses. She couldn't possibly know the weight of it, but I sure did. Over the years, she and Otterly would often hum or sing that song, sometimes right after Marjorie was mentioned, always eerie timing. Around 4:30, a cab pulled up and Andorra stepped out. The girls let her in and we were finally formally introduced. Carol, Andorra, and I settled in the living room while Frank corralled the kids outside. Andorra was sympathetic, though Carol did most of the explaining, including the girls' school night plan. Andorra confirmed she'd been offered a better-paying Sunday night supervisor shift at the cab office, which made the whole arrangement convenient. Without much discussion, we all agreed to follow the girls' plan. Carol also offered to help with holiday childcare if needed. Andorra called her boss, confirmed the shift, and when she glanced at me for approval, I just nodded. There was only one catch. Rachel needed her school clothes. Carol drove her and Andorra home to grab them, with Otterly tagging along. As I carried Rachel's bag inside, I had a thought. Andorra, do you drive? Yeah, but I couldn't afford to keep a car after Tony left. What if you took the Nissan? I offered, nodding toward Marjorie's car. Andorra froze. I couldn't. Why not? Marjorie doesn't need it, and you'll need something to get Otterly to school. You're sure? Absolutely. Let's add you to my insurance and drop Marjorie. Let Ronald the rat figure out his own coverage. His name's Ronald, Dad, Otterly corrected. Not to me. He's Ronald the rat. As I carried Rachel's bag inside, a thought struck me. I turned to Andorra. Do you drive? Yeah, Andorra said. But I couldn't afford to keep a car after Tony left. What if you took the Nissan? I suggested, nodding toward Marjorie's car. Andorra froze. I couldn't. Why not? I asked. Marjorie doesn't need it, and you'll need something to get Otterly to school. You're sure? Andorra asked hesitantly. Absolutely, I said. We'll add you to my insurance and drop Marjorie. Let Ronald the rat figure out his own coverage. His name's Ronald, Dad, Otterly chimed in. Not to me, he's Ronald the rat, I said with a grin. Dad, Roland Rat's cute and funny, Otterly giggled. Fair point. Fine, Ronald the rat it is. Over the following weeks, we settled into a new routine. Carol often showed up Saturdays to check my pantry and make sure I was stocked up, usually cooking lunch too. She didn't wear white gloves, but she definitely inspected the house every time. With Otterly at Andorra's during the week, keeping the place clean was surprisingly easy. Weekdays were lonely at first, but I adjusted. Fridays became my favorite, coming home to find Andorra and the girls already there, often with dinner ready before her shift. The hardest moments were weeknights, coming home to an empty house or waking up alone after a decade of marriage. No matter how angry I was at Marjorie, the silence was hard to get used to. The divorce itself dragged out. Marjorie and her dream man were constantly on the move, and her lawyer struggled to keep in touch. It didn't help that Ronald's furious wife was fighting for child support at the same time, a fight I wanted no part of. I met her once, briefly, but I had my own problems. The only help I gave her was passing along Marjorie's location whenever Otterly, with surprising skill, pried it out of her mom during calls. Whether Otterly knew why I wanted the info, I'm still not sure. In the end, Marjorie's evasiveness worked in my favor. At a court hearing, her lawyer asked for yet another delay, citing lack of communication. The judge, fed up, asked where Marjorie was. Her lawyer admitted they had no clue. The judge turned to me. Mr. Thomas, do you know where your wife is? I stood. I haven't had any contact with her since she left. Technically true. I never spoke to her directly. That's all the judge wanted to hear. Frustrated, he declared her behavior unreasonable and granted my divorce on the spot. He also awarded me full custody of Otterly. With no reliable communication, I see no way joint custody could work, the judge said. Mr. Thomas is granted sole custody, and Mrs. Thomas's parental rights are hereby fully terminated. The judge's eyes narrowed. If Mrs. Thomas appears in court within 21 days, I may reconsider, the judge said. Will you attempt to contact her? I'll try, Your Honor, the solicitor replied. Though everyone in the room knew it was futile, the judge turned their attention back to me. Frankly, Mr. Thomas, I doubt she'll show, or that anything she says would change my mind, the judge continued. What surprises me is that you haven't filed for child support. Honestly, Your Honor, I doubt I'd ever see a penny unless she returns to the UK, I said. The judge leaned over to whisper something to the clerk, flipped through a stack of papers, then looked up again. Regardless, the judge said, I'm issuing a temporary order, £100 a month just to set precedent. If she ever reappears, we can revisit it. I also suggest your attorney investigate whether she still has any assets in the UK. And that was it. I left court with full custody, ownership of everything Marjorie left behind, and the option to pursue her remaining assets. Not that I ever bothered. The following Monday, I noticed a missed international call, almost certainly Marjorie. Neither Otterly nor Rachel mentioned it or volunteered her location, which was unusual. I assumed they'd been distracted. Despite not being at court, the girls somehow knew about the 21-day window. I doubt the court-appointed social worker told them, so I chalked it up to their mysterious network of playground intelligence. Marjorie's calls became rare, and when they did happen, were mostly monologues. The only consistent part was Otterly's increasingly subtle attempts to figure out where her mom was. The calls stopped altogether once Ronald's divorce was finalized. Somehow, the girls knew the moment it happened, probably through playground gossip. They also knew more about Marjorie's affair timeline than I did, which didn't surprise me. Adults always underestimate how much kids know. About 4 months after court, I took the girls to a movie and McDonald's. Mid-burger, Rachel casually said, "Me and Mom are moving soon." When I asked why, she explained the lease was up and the rent was too high. At the time, I thought nothing of it. It never crossed my mind that these two little masterminds were already plotting to move Rachel and Andorra into my house, and that I was being gently manipulated into it. The setup came the following Friday during dinner. Andorra had made a lovely meal before heading to her shift, and out of nowhere, Otterly asked, "AD, have you found a new apartment yet?" Before Andorra could respond, Rachel launched into exaggerated horror stories about the places they'd seen. Andorra downplayed them, but it was obvious the girls had been tagging along on every viewing. Then came the masterstroke. "Why don't you and Rachel just move in with us?" Otterly suggested sweetly. "Rachel already has a bed here, and it would save all the back and forth." To my surprise, it actually made sense, saving the money and cutting down on all the driving. And if I was honest, I liked the idea of some extra company. I glanced at Andorra for her reaction, but she avoided my gaze, leaving me unsure how to respond. Rejecting the idea might offend her. Agreeing too eagerly might embarrass her. So I muddied the waters. "Well, sweetie, sometimes when unmarried men and women live together, people talk," I said awkwardly. Andorra burst out laughing. "Pete, you sound like my grandmother." "I was thinking about your reputation," I tried to explain. "My what? Please." Andorra shook her head. "My neighbors already think I'm working. Let's just say, an interesting night job. Thanks to me disappearing every weekend and driving a newer car." "The Nissan?" I asked, confused. "It's practically luxury compared to what they drive," she said. I stared at her, stunned. "You're joking." "Nope," Andorra said. "The sooner we're out of there, the better." "What about Otterly's idea?" I asked. "There's plenty of room here." "Are you sure?" Andorra asked, her expression softening. "Of course," I said. "The house is too quiet during the week anyway. And you're a better cook than me." "Is that a compliment?" she teased. "Absolutely," I said with a grin. "And I already see two girls planning our move-in celebration." We both glanced at the girls, grinning ear to ear. "We'll figure out expenses later," I said. "You moving in works for all of us." "If you're inviting us, we'd love to," Andorra said with a smile. Most of Andorra's old furniture didn't come with her, just a few personal things, her TV and her stereo, most of it ending up in the girls' room. The house felt like home again. My mood noticeably lifted, even my coworkers commented. I skipped after-work drinks more often because I had better things waiting for me. Bedtime stories and goodnight hugs. The traveling I used to love quietly faded from my life, and I was fine with that. Sometime after they moved in, I realized I was falling for Andorra, hard. I was convinced I was hiding it well. But Carol, of course, saw right through me. That Christmas, Carol and Frank came over for Boxing Day dinner. As Carol and I set the table, she asked casually, "Have you told her yet?" "Told who what?" I asked, genuinely confused. Carol gave me a pointed look. "Andorra, you idiot! What am I supposed to tell her?" "That you're completely in love with her," Carol said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Don't be ridiculous," I said, though my face was already burning. Carol rolled her eyes. "Please, Pete, you're easier to read than a kid's book. You're even worse than you were over Stephanie Mathers." For context, Stephanie Mathers was my high school crush, my first love. It took me years to work up the nerve to ask her out. She led me on, broke my heart, and Carol and her friends spent months helping me forget her with their own version of teenage therapy. "Sure, I'm fond of Andorra," I admitted. "But why mess with something that works? If I say the wrong thing, it could ruin everything." Carol shook her head. "Pete, you two tiptoe around each other like nervous teenagers. It's obvious to everyone, even the girls. What are you talking about? Every time you pass each other in the hall, you both take the long way around just to avoid brushing shoulders," Carol said. "People only do that if they hate each other, or if they're crazy about each other." "You're overthinking it," I said. "Am I?" Carol challenged. You joke with everyone, but never with her. You're both terrified of messing this up. So you think she feels the same way? I asked, trying not to sound too hopeful. Pete, Carol said gently, even the girls can see it. What am I supposed to do about it? Tell her, Carol said firmly. You used to be good at that, before Marjorie ran you into the ground. You never liked Marjorie, did you? I asked, though I already knew the answer. No, Carol said bluntly. She used you. The walking paycheck with a bright future. I never believed she really loved you. You're wrong, I said, though without much conviction. Maybe, Carol said with a shrug, but it doesn't matter now. What matters is you've got another shot, with someone who actually cares about you. Don't blow it. Before I could argue, Andorra walked in to check on dinner, cutting the conversation short. Throughout the meal, Carol kept making subtle gestures toward Andorra and sharing conspiratorial looks with the girls. For the next few days, I almost said something to Andorra, but always chickened out. Then New Year's Eve came. Andorra was working, and Carol took the girls so I could go to a work party. I didn't want to leave them, but they insisted. Another conspiracy I didn't recognize at the time. By 4 a.m., so drunk and in no condition to drive, I called for a cab. To my surprise, Andorra answered the phone. Hey, gorgeous, I slurred. Send someone to get me. Are you drunk, Pete? Andorra asked, half laughing, half horrified. You bet, babe, I said, leaning heavily against the wall. I'll send Phil, she said. Try not to puke in his car. Anything for you, beautiful, I said. Way too bold, but too drunk to care. Phil showed up, helped me into the cab, then drove me not home, but to Andorra's. You need someone to put you to bed, Phil said, and I'm not volunteering. Next thing I knew, Phil and Andorra were half carrying me inside. I might have exaggerated how helpless I was just to keep her close. Phil helped me upstairs, then left me in her care. Tipsy courage took over. As she fussed with my clothes and blankets, I blurted, You know you're gorgeous, Andorra. Oh, yeah, she smirked. And what's that supposed to mean? That you're good enough to eat, I grinned sloppily. She laughed. I doubt you could keep anything down right now. How much did you drink? Not enough. Get some sleep, Romeo. Tell me how you feel when you're sober. She started to leave, but I caught her hand, gently pulling her back beside me. She didn't leave, and at some point I passed out. The next morning, sunlight stabbed through the windows, splitting my head in two. Andorra stood beside me, holding out a drink, a mischievous smile on her face. Don't worry, she teased. I won't poison you. At least, not until I'm sure you've got life insurance. I squinted at the glass. What's this? Hangover cure, she said. We traded playful threats, each joking about who would bump off the other first, until the conversation took a more serious turn. You know, Andorra said softly, the girls already think of each other as sisters, and they both think of you as their dad. I hesitated. What about you? Well, she said with a small smile, I guess I'm Otterly's mom now too. Haven't you noticed? She's called me mom a few times. Really? I asked, surprised. And Rachel's been calling you daddy for weeks, Andorra added. I'd missed it all. Typical me. Well, I said, trying to lighten the moment, Carol's already planning her wedding outfit. Andorra laughed, but there was a flicker of hesitation in her eyes. What's wrong? I asked. I need to tell you something before you say anything stupid, she said. Okay, I prompted. I'm not a widow, Pete, Andorra said quietly. What? I frowned. Tony's not dead. He's a bigamist. Our marriage was never legal. I stared at her, trying to process what I was hearing. He married at least 3 women before skipping the country, she explained. That's why I told Rachel he was dead. If anyone tracks him down, he's looking at prison. So, I said slowly, you've never actually been married. Not legally, she confirmed. I smiled. In that case, would you? I never finished. The next hour was spent tangled together, kissing, holding, laughing, just like a couple of teenagers. We didn't cross any lines, but by the time my hangover eased, I knew we'd crossed into something else entirely. By the time Frank dropped off the girls, it was mid-afternoon, and Andorra and I were still figuring out how to break the news to them. Turns out we didn't have to. The moment they walked in and saw Andorra practically in my lap, they exchanged a triumphant high five and ran over to hug us. Frank came in, took one look at us, and smirked. Congratulations. When's the wedding? That, of course, led to calling Carol, who immediately went into full planning mode. We settled on a mid-February date. Simple ceremony, slightly over-the-top reception, thanks to the girls' insistence. It was small, mostly family and close friends, and the registry office was perfect, avoiding the awkwardness of listing Rachel's non-existent father in the records. After Frank and Carol left, Andorra resigned from the cab company. My first wife would never have worked night shifts. Not for pride, but because she couldn't stand sleeping alone. Truthfully, neither could I. That night, Andorra and I faced a practical question: sleeping arrangements until the wedding. We agreed to separate rooms for the girls' sake. Didn't mean I didn't pop home for lunch more often, though, and those lunches often stretched into afternoons. No one at work complained. My mood had noticeably improved. The following weekend, Andorra worked her final shifts, leaving with so many flowers, chocolates, and gifts that it took multiple cabs to get them home. The wedding itself was perfect. The girls made adorable bridesmaids, though Andorra and Carol spent more time fussing over them than the bride herself. Not that it mattered. Andorra could make a potato sack look elegant. We skipped a formal honeymoon, just one night at the reception hotel while the girls stayed with Carol and Frank. The plan was a big family trip in the summer, 5 weeks bouncing between Florida, the Caribbean, and California. A couple of weeks after the wedding, I came home to find the girls happy, but Andorra visibly upset. After bedtime, she told me why. "Did you know Rachel knows Tony isn't dead?" "What? How?" "No idea." But she knew. Worse, she and Otterly had tucked away the photos of Marjorie and Tony from their bedside tables, saying, "They don't need us, so we don't need them." Rachel didn't seem bothered by the truth. If anything, it made her and Otterly even closer. Andorra chose not to reveal the whole story, that Rachel was legally illegitimate, because there was no need. In time, it was clear. Andorra wasn't just a wonderful wife. She was an incredible mother. She handled the girls' antics with endless patience and had a sense of humor that could disarm any situation. Even when work stressed me out, she knew how to keep me grounded, sometimes with humor, sometimes with other creative methods. By summer, Marjorie's calls had nearly stopped. When she did call, Otterly wasn't shy about referring to Andorra as new mommy until we made her tone it down. Still, Otterly found ways to subtly and not so subtly let Marjorie know just how happy we all were without her. Andorra and I talked about managing Otterly's bitterness toward her mom, but we eventually gave up. Marjorie had made her choices. We weren't going to shield her from the consequences. That summer, the girls started dropping hints, leaving adoption papers and name change forms around the house. They were clearly hoping we'd make it official. 2 parents, 2 daughters, 1 family. We agreed. Either we'd both adopt, or neither of us would. Of course, we needed to terminate Tony's parental rights first. Fortunately, the same judge from my divorce handled the case, and within a year, everything was finalized. Legally, we were the Thomas family: Pete, Andorra, Otterly, and Rachel. We briefly considered adding to the family, but ultimately decided we were complete. Around the same time, I got a promotion. More pay, fewer hours, and the flexibility to make our family trips a regular thing. In our second year of marriage, we spent 5 weeks exploring Europe. The next year, we tackled India and Sri Lanka. Stunning, chaotic, and humbling all at once. The year after that, we made it to Australia and New Zealand, accidentally landing in midwinter. Being British, we hardly noticed. Both girls, now 14, had become skilled with their video cameras, documenting every adventure. That year's plan: Canada, the northern U.S., and Alaska. The girls and Andorra handled most of the planning, while I occasionally suggested offbeat stops I'd read about years earlier, which they always found a way to include. One thing none of us had factored in, though, was Marjorie. 2 years after our wedding, Marjorie started sending Christmas cards, not just to Otterly, but to Andorra and me too. There were no return addresses, but every card carried Canadian postage. It was clear she and Ronald had settled somewhere in Canada. We barely paid attention. Marjorie had faded into the background of our lives, especially after her calls to Otterly all but stopped. By the time we were planning this trip, we rarely thought of her at all. As usual, our itinerary evolved along the way. Eventually, the girls realized there was no way to see everything we wanted in one go. We drew a line across the map, saving the eastern half for another year. We flew into Winnipeg in late June, spent a couple of days exploring, then grabbed a rental car and hit the road. Our route took us west to Saskatchewan, then south into the Dakotas, Nebraska, and Kansas. From there, we headed west again and up into Colorado and Wyoming. where we spent a few days at a dude ranch. The horses were fine, the constant rain down my neck less so, and I quickly realized I preferred English saddles to their bulkier Western cousins. Eventually, we crossed into Montana and checked into a small-town motel, the kind of place you read about in old Western novels. We found a diner for dinner, loud and bustling, until the sudden crash of a dropped tray silenced the room. Every head turned, including ours. And that's when I saw her, Marjorie. She froze, eyes locked on me, clearly as shocked as I was. Judging by the stiffness in Andora's posture, she recognized her immediately, too. Without thinking, we both spoke at once, each addressing our own daughter. "Eat your dinner, Otterly." "Eat your dinner, Rachel." Old habits die hard. The girls, of course, couldn't resist sneaking a look. Otterly recognized her instantly, shrugged, and calmly went back to eating, muttering something like figures under her breath. Rachel stared a bit longer before Marjorie bolted to the back. Then Rachel gave me a sweet, knowing smile, glanced at Andorra, and followed her sister's lead, acting like nothing had happened. Some of the other diners cast curious glances our way, clearly sensing the undercurrent of family drama, but we ignored them and finished our meal. As we trailed behind the girls, who had already dashed ahead toward the car, Andorra muttered, "Guess the grass wasn't quite as lush as it seemed." "What's that supposed to mean?" I asked, my tone sharper than I'd intended. Andorra glanced at me. "If she's working here now, it's probably safe to assume she and Ronald aren't together anymore. My money's on one of them stepping out." "They say cheaters never change," I said, bitterness creeping into my voice. "She didn't cheat on you, Pete," Andorra said firmly. "That selfish witch just up and left, ditched both you and Otterly." "You really expect me to believe nothing happened between them before the divorce?" I asked, the question heavier than I meant it to be. "Besides," Andorra added with a shrug, "anyone who abandons their kid is just as bad in my book." "Either she couldn't keep her hands off him or he couldn't resist her," I said flatly. Andorra shrugged. "Does it even matter anymore?" "Only if she decides to stir the pot now," I replied. "Otterly's been through more than enough already. No need to drag her through more drama." "Honestly," Andorra said, "it's probably too late for Marjorie to cause much injury now. Besides, Otterly handled it all better than you did." "Considering what those two schemers pulled off," Andorra trailed off, a sly smile tugging at her lips. "Don't even say it," I cut in, laughing softly. "I know exactly what our little masterminds cooked up. And honestly, I'm grateful we've got a couple of clever tricksters. Though," Andorra added thoughtfully, "I do wonder just how far back their plotting really started." I gave her a curious look. "What do you mean by that?" "Nothing major," she said with a shrug. "It's just obvious they had a strategy. Sometimes I wonder how early they started laying the groundwork." "Well," I said with a grin, "I'm not complaining about the outcome. It all worked out in the end. I just get curious sometimes." By then, we'd reached the car. I clicked the key fob to unlock the doors, and the girls climbed into the back without missing a beat. I held the passenger door open for Andorra, but she didn't get in right away. Instead, she stepped closer, wrapped her arms around my neck, and kissed me. The girls in the back instantly erupted into dramatic groans and exaggerated complaints. Seriously? In public?" Rachel protested. "Can't you guys save that for your bedroom?" Otterly chimed in. On paper, it might have come off disrespectful for a couple of 14-year-olds, but our girls weren't typical teenagers. They were mature far beyond their years. Life had forced them to grow up fast. Rachel lost the idealized image of her dad when she was only 6, and Andorra had carried the weight of single motherhood ever since. Otterly watched her mom walk away when she was 8, leaving her to pick up the pieces alongside me. I didn't exactly handle Marjorie leaving gracefully, but somehow my daughter, with Rachel's support, grew into someone far more capable and level-headed than any kid should have to be. Andorra suddenly broke the kiss, leaning in close to whisper, "We've got an audience." I glanced over my shoulder and, sure enough, there was Marjorie, standing in the kitchen doorway watching us. "Should we?" Andorra began. "Yeah, we probably don't have much of a choice," I said, already resigned to the fact that this confrontation was inevitable. Whether I wanted to or not, I'd have to talk to Marjorie, and most likely set up some kind of meeting between her and Otterly. It wasn't a conversation I was looking forward to, but postponing it wouldn't make it any easier. Andorra leaned against the car and called back to the girls. "Your mom's over there," she said gently, I think you should go say hello. Do I have to? Otterly's voice was thick with reluctance. She's still your mother, sweetheart. Please, just do this for us. Someday you might wish you'd taken the opportunity, Andorra said softly. Otterly sighed heavily, then dragged herself out of the car. I don't want to see her, she grumbled. Can Rachel come with me? Not this time, honey, Andorra said gently. We'll be right here the whole time. You'll be able to see us. Reluctantly, Otterly shuffled toward Marjorie, stopping about 10 feet away, clearly unwilling to get any closer. Marjorie said something we couldn't make out, taking a hesitant step forward, but Otterly instantly took a step back, keeping the distance between them. It was frustrating not knowing what they were saying, but from their posture, it was obvious Otterly was doing most of the talking. Every time Marjorie tried to move closer, Otterly would instinctively back away. That's not a good sign, Andorra murmured under her breath, trying to keep her voice low enough so Rachel wouldn't hear. Before we could process much more, Otterly spun around and bolted back to the car. She yanked the door open, buckled herself in, and stared straight ahead, her expression blank. I glanced back toward the kitchen, but Marjorie had already disappeared. I assumed she'd slipped back inside. Driving off without another word would have been my preference, but Andorra had other plans. Before I could say a word, she was already halfway across the parking lot, heading straight for the restaurant. That left me standing awkwardly by the car, trying not to feel like a fool, until Andorra finally returned about 10 minutes later. When she climbed back into her seat, I raised an eyebrow in silent question, but all she gave me was a quick, not now look, the kind that warned me to keep my mouth shut until we were alone. The girls had no clue we'd planned to take them on a walk along the river after lunch to check out the waterfalls the town was known for. We'd heard they weren't as impressive as they once were, thanks to the hydroelectric dams, but they were still supposed to be worth seeing. As was typical during these walks, Andorra and I trailed a bit behind, giving the girls space to wander ahead and giving us a rare chance to talk in private. So what did she say? I asked, keeping my voice low. She got dumped, Andorra replied bluntly. Ronald walked out on her 2 years ago for some waitress from around here. Can't say that's a surprise, I muttered. Why didn't she just go back to the UK? She couldn't, Andorra explained. He ditched her with the motel bill, and since the restaurant was short-staffed, they offered her a job to work off the debt. She's been stuck here ever since. It's taken her 2 years to pay off a hotel tab? I asked skeptically. Well, Andorra said, she's splitting a room with another woman, and between the two of them, they work the restaurant during the day and the bar across the street at night. What a glamorous life, I said dryly. Andorra gave me a pointed look. What other options did she have, Pete? Find some random guy to take care of her? I wasn't trying to be mean, I said, a little defensive. She made her choices. Now she's living with the consequences. She made mistakes, sure, Andorra said softly. And now she's paying the price. Either way, you'll have a chance to talk to her later. Her shift ends at 6, and there's a gap before she heads over to the bar. I'll take the girls to grab some food so you two can talk. And what exactly am I supposed to say to her? I asked. You need closure, Pete, Andorra said gently. Whether you're angry, indifferent, or somewhere in between, you need to face her. For your own sake, and more importantly, for Otterly's. No matter what Marjorie did, she's still Otterly's mother. Did she ever remember that? I asked bitterly. She said the same thing, Andorra replied. She knows she screwed up. She told me she wants to apologize to both of you. Whether Otterly's ready to hear it is another story. After lunch, I think we both saw that she's not there yet. Maybe someday, Andorra added. But it's up to us to make sure Otterly doesn't cut her off completely. You're being surprisingly understanding about all this, I said, eyeing her curiously, especially after everything Tony put you through. What's the point of holding on to hate? She asked quietly. What Tony did to me was worse than anything Marjorie ever did to you, or even to Otterly. She paused for a moment, her expression softening. I hated him for a long time, and I hated all the other women he duped into marrying him too. But eventually, we all ended up sitting together in a police station waiting room. That's when I realized we were all just sufferers. None of us were to blame. We actually ended up becoming friends. She sighed. Tony? He's not worth my energy. If he ever shows his face again, I'll gladly hand him over to the cops. But until then, I've got far better things to focus on. You, the girls, our life. She leaned over and kissed my cheek, smiling. Besides, if Marjorie hadn't run off with that slime ball, where would you and I be now? Fair point, I admitted with a smile. Of course it is, she said, flashing a grin. Now come on, it's already after 4. Later that day, I stood in the restaurant parking lot waiting as Marjorie wrapped up her shift. When she finally stepped outside, another woman, dark-haired and wary-looking, walked out beside her. The woman gave me a lingering, suspicious once-over before walking away. Marjorie herself looked uneasy, nothing like the confident, cutting woman who had so casually announced our divorce all those years ago. That said, she still looked good. Some things didn't change. "Hey, Peter," she said, her voice hesitant. "Thanks for waiting. The bar's pretty empty this time of day. Maybe we can sit there and talk?" I didn't bother answering, just motioned for her to lead the way. We ended up at a corner booth in the back, clearly a spot set aside for this conversation. The dark-haired woman was now behind the bar, speaking quietly to the bartender. Every other booth was empty, as if they'd made sure we'd have privacy. A minute later, the same woman came over, set 2 beers in front of us, and said something to Marjorie in Spanish. Marjorie gave her a quick nod. "You're the one who wanted this meeting, Marjorie," I said flatly. "Let's not pretend it was my idea." I just wanted to say I'm sorry," she said softly, barely above a whisper. "Don't apologize to me. You did me a favor," I replied, my tone cold. A flash of the old Marjorie flared in her eyes. "Right, you ended up with Andorra. I should have known she'd sink her claws into you the second I left." "You've got that backwards," I corrected her. "The second I saw her?" I trailed off, not sure how to finish. Would I have left Marjorie if Andorra had come into my life sooner? Probably not. I'd been too caught up in loyalty and a warped sense of commitment back then. But thinking about it now, it was tempting. "Whatever happened to Ronald?" I asked. "And where did all his supposed money come from? His family was left with nothing." Marjorie let out a bitter laugh. "Money? That wasn't his money. It was everyone else's. He was a scam artist, Peter. He's wanted in at least 5 countries. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the only reason he dumped me was because I knew too much." "He ditched you?" I asked, surprised. "Yeah," she said. "We were forced to flee Argentina when my photo ended up in the papers. Not long after, he crossed into Canada with, you guessed it, a waitress. And lucky me, I ended up taking her old job." "Didn't the FBI have you on their radar too?" I asked. "Oh, they did," Marjorie said with a shrug. "But I cut a deal. I agreed to testify against him if they ever catch him. In return, they gave me a slap on the wrist, 2 years probation, and regular check-ins with the sheriff. Most of the time, I just check in at the diner." "Are you still in debt?" I asked. "I was buried in it," Marjorie admitted. "I had to sign over everything, even the rental car. The waitress he ran off with drove off in it. I'm almost done paying off what's left. Just a few thousand more to go." Without thinking, I pulled out my checkbook. Marjorie's eyes widened in shock. "Pete, no," she said quickly. "I can't accept that." "For once, Marjorie, just do what I'm telling you," I said, scribbling out the check without hesitation. £5,000, around 10 grand, I said, handing it to her. "It should be enough to clear what you owe and leave you with a little extra. If you ever decide to head back to the UK once Ronald's finally caught, it'll give you a bit of breathing room." I glanced up at her, my expression firm. "But don't misinterpret this. It doesn't mean you're welcome to insert yourself into our lives. You know full well the courts took away all your parental rights where Otterly is concerned." Marjorie's voice was soft, almost fragile. "She told me that earlier today. I'm sorry, Pete. That's not why I wanted to see her." "I assumed as much when Andorra told me what was going on," I said, my voice calm but distant. "I was a fool, Pete. I never set out to hurt you, or Otterly. I got swept up in Ronald's fantasies and promises, in the excitement of it all." "That's all ancient history," I said with a sigh. "What matters now is you're alive. Otterly and I have built something new, something stable. And you're not part of that. Andorra and I will do what we can to keep the door open just enough for Otterly, but that's all I can offer." "That's more than I have any right to expect," she murmured. "And I definitely don't deserve this." She gestured at the check. "Take it," I said, sliding it across the table. "It's as much for my peace of mind as anything else. We'll stop by the diner in the morning for breakfast. Maybe Otterly will be willing to talk to you one more time." Her voice trembled. "I don't deserve the kindness you're showing me, Peter." "No," I agreed, getting to my feet. "But whether you deserve it or not, you're still her mother. And that's something I can't change." I stood there for a beat longer, then turned to leave. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm ready to get back to my family." "I understand. I'm sorry, Pete." she whispered. Without another glance, I walked out. When I rejoined Andorra and the girls, they were standing there, silent and tense, like they'd all been holding their breath, waiting for some sign of how it had gone. I pulled Andorra aside and gave her a quick summary of my conversation with Marjorie, including the money I'd given her. When I finished, Andorra shook her head slightly. "She's not worthy of that kind of generosity," she said softly. "Funny, that's pretty much what she said too," I replied, pressing a kiss to Andorra's forehead. "You still wanted to do it, though," she said, her voice gentle. "Yeah," I admitted. "Thank you," she whispered, leaning into me. Later, I found a quiet moment with Otterly. I was about to ease into a gentle speech about how you only get one biological mother. But before I could get a single word out, she cut me off with a smile. "Don't bother, Dad," she said. "Andorra and Rachel already gave me the whole speech." Her tone was light, but there was a quiet strength behind it. In that moment, I realized I didn't need to say anything more. Then, to my surprise, she mentioned, almost casually, that she'd be fine seeing her mom at breakfast the next day. She even said she'd try to be polite under one condition. "I'm not sitting with her alone," Otterly said firmly. "Either Rachel or you have to be with me." "Why's that?" I asked, curious. She shrugged. "Because you or Rachel were always there for the fun stuff." That answer left me wondering, and though I couldn't quite unpack it, I decided to leave it alone. The next morning, the three of them, Otterly, Rachel, and Marjorie, sat at a table near ours at the diner. They talked for what felt like hours, though I doubt Marjorie was even supposed to be off the clock. I could only assume her coworkers were covering for her. From where Andorra and I sat, we couldn't catch much of the conversation, just snippets here and there. The only clear part was the girls raving about how well the Roses were doing back home. Whatever else they talked about, all three of them spent most of the time smiling, which felt like something close to a victory. When it was finally time to go, Marjorie walked with us to the car. She hugged and kissed both girls, then turned to Andorra and me. Her voice caught slightly when she said, "These girls hit the jackpot. They've got the best mom and dad any kid could ask for." The unexpected compliment left me momentarily speechless, and before I could come up with a reply, she spun around and hurried back inside. I had a feeling she was crying before the door even closed behind her. I kissed Andorra softly before we all climbed into the car and set off, heading north toward the Canadian border and on to Calgary. Neither of the girls turned to look back, and from the way they stared straight ahead, it was clear neither felt the need to. After we got home that year, Marjorie stayed in touch. At first, it was the occasional letter, but eventually Andorra made it a point to write back fairly often, keeping the door open just a crack. We never heard if the authorities ever caught up to Ronald. What we did hear, less than a year later, was that Marjorie was engaged. Her fiancé? None other than the local deputy sheriff, the same one everyone around there called Buddy. As a family, we talked it over and agreed it would be best to politely decline the wedding invitation. But for reasons I can't quite explain. Maybe closure, maybe some lingering sense of responsibility. I felt like I needed to be there. So I took a quiet trip back to Canada, just me for a few days. Buddy turned out to be a genuinely good guy. He even picked me up from the airport himself, introduced me to his family, and made me feel welcome. During that visit, I learned Marjorie had been upfront with him from the very beginning, told him the whole messy story. Ronald, me, Otterly, everything. It was Buddy, apparently, who'd come up with the whole Christmas card scheme, enlisting his trucker buddies to mail them from all over the country. Marjorie had been trying to keep us from realizing just how bad things had gotten for her, trying to preserve a shred of dignity. Walking her down the aisle that day was one of the strangest, most surreal moments of my life. But someone had to do it, and oddly enough, it felt like the right way to finally close that door for both of us. To this day, I don't know if Otterly or Rachel ever figured out where I disappeared to during those 5 days. If they did, they never brought it up. But honestly, those two were always miles ahead of me. And truthfully, they still are, just like Andorra and me. As the years passed, we occasionally heard bits and pieces about Marjorie's life, including the news that she'd had 2 sons. We never got the chance to meet them in person, but we saw a few photos along the way. As they grew up, it seemed they gradually built a connection with Otterly and Rachel, keeping in touch fairly often. That said, my daughters rarely brought up Marjorie or their younger brothers around me. It was almost as if, without ever saying it aloud, we all agreed it was best to leave the past where it belonged. In one of those strange twists life likes to throw at you, Otterly and Rachel both ended up marrying a pair of brothers, two truly exceptional men. I'll admit I sometimes feel a little sorry for those guys, though. Otterly and Rachel have always been a force of nature when they team up, and that hasn't changed one bit. Once those two get an idea in their heads, there's no stopping them. Not then, not now, and certainly not for their husbands. I sure never figured out how to win against them. Both couples went on to have 2 kids each. And, unsurprisingly, all 4 grandkids arrived suspiciously close together, both in timing and where they were born. It was almost like my daughters coordinated it on purpose, which, knowing them, wouldn't surprise me one bit. And Dora and I have had the joy of watching our grandchildren grow. And every time I see them, I catch glimpses of Otterly and Rachel at those ages, like little echoes of the past playing out all over again. Only now, there's a bit more distance, a lot less stress, and way more laughter. I stepped down from my position as managing director last year, and now Andorra and I are about halfway through an 8-month trip around the world. We've even tossed around the idea of settling down somewhere new once we're done traveling. Though, if I'm being honest, I suspect our daughters and grandkids will end up drawing us right back to the UK when all's said and done. We never did put the house on the market. Not because of sentimental attachments, but because of the garden. The girls flat out refused to let us sell thanks to the roses. I have no idea how much time they spend out there pruning, planting, and fussing over them. But they make sure we're kept in the loop with constant updates, photos, and progress reports. Just this morning, in fact, I checked my email and found the latest snapshot of the garden. The subject line summed it up perfectly. The roses are thriving this year. Life keeps moving forward, and somehow the roses keep blooming right along with it. I checked the house. Nothing left behind. Bag packed. I told my wife I'd park the company car at the airport. It was still at the office. I retired at 45. Took a smaller pension. Stock options made up the rest. No taxes, bigger checks. Moved the money quietly. Last Friday, I cashed out. Final paycheck. Vacation pay. $850,000 in stock. Waited until today to deposit. Not joint property. I gave away the suits, kept one. Sold or dumped the rest. Moved where it's cheaper. Rented a U-Haul under my uncle's name. Paid cash. Left the West Coast. Left the job. Left my wife. I needed space. She hated the farm I still owned. That helped. Married a snob. Should have seen it. Now I did. The farm stayed mine. The rentals built me a buffer. I'd fix tractors instead of managing factories. The old house was ready enough. I called Kendra. Told her I'd be gone before she got back. I'm eager to be home, she said. The party was set. Daughters and sons-in-law would arrive early. Kendra's boss and his wife were coming too. She said they'd come, my daughter said. They didn't know the real reason. 50 guests, late birthday. She said she missed the first one for work. I knew better. I left them a video. Play it at the end, I said. Use the patio TV. I texted David, my son-in-law, my new number and email. He worked with me. He guessed the affair. Wasn't sure until I showed him the file. Wipe your info, he said. Close your Facebook. Done. When Kendra's plane took off, he added, let her guess, she deserves it. She'd still get half. I'd still be fine. I sent the numbers to my lawyer. I could buy a new place, cash to spare. I tossed my phone in the kitchen trash. No one would notice until after the party. Leaving California was easy. Heading back to South Dakota felt right. No more than 10 people would miss me. I smiled, bought a new phone, new number, made one call. This is the new number, I'm headed out. Got it, she said. I shut off the phone to save the battery. The drive east would be long, but the mid-March roads would be empty. Spring was coming, the land would show it. Kendra and I met at an Aerosmith concert. She was California-born, I was from out of state. We married a year later, same day, same date my parents flew in. I worked R&D. She did importing and marketing. We stayed at it for years. Even now, Kendra could still turn heads. Same figure as when we met. Knew how to dress. I didn't age as well, the usual gut and gray. Kendra was eager to get home. 2 weeks gone with her boss and lover, Eric Hopper. She pitied Colin, her husband, for missing the party. But these things happened. Busy lives. Eric had been a break. The heat was fun, but she preferred routine. Twice a week love. Steady, safe. The jet landed. Kendra drove home, still thinking about the trip. The surprise hit her fast. Family packed the house. Daughters, sons-in-law, friends, even co-workers. Then she spotted Eric and his wife. "Who invited them?" she asked. Her oldest smiled. "I did. He brags about you. His wife wanted to meet you." Kendra glowed. Proud, special. At 8 p.m., the daughters took the stage. "Mom," the twins said, "Dad didn't want to miss it. He made you something." They turned on the big patio TV, pressed play. The room fell quiet. My voice filled the air. "Happy birthday, dear," I began with a half smile. People chuckled. Kendra grinned, sitting front and center. "I figured since I couldn't be there tonight, I'd still drop by," I said. "It's been a big year. Our first grandson. Loud little guy, got your eyes. Our last daughter finally tied the knot. We made it to another anniversary. Hell, we even started planning a second honeymoon, just like old times." I leaned forward on the screen, eyes steady. "Honestly, I thought we were making it back to where we started, before life got complicated. Before we became roommates pretending to be lovers." Some people in the crowd shifted in their seats. But then, my tone dropped. I came back from that overseas trip and found something on our security feed. The projector cut to security footage. No warning, no sugarcoating. Kendra and our daughters, right on that same patio, wine glasses in hand, laughing like teenagers. Except they weren't talking about recipe swaps. The party went dead silent. The only sound was the playback. They were bragging about their lovers, how easy it was to lie, how stupid their husbands were for believing them. They named names, hotels, excuses they fed their spouses. Kendra? She was the ringleader. She even joked about searching for her next one, like she was shopping for shoes. The husbands in the crowd stared. Some blinked like they'd been slapped. One of the sons-in-law rubbed his temples. Back on the screen, I leaned back in the chair, cool and collected. "Wild, huh?" I said. At first, I couldn't believe it either. So I did what anyone would do. I dug deeper. The second clip played. Kendra and her boss, Eric Hopper, Vancouver. Long beach walks without clothes. One hotel room, one double bed. Sunset dinners. Horse carriage rides through Stanley Park like they were newlyweds. A private boat cruise around the cove. Some guests covered their mouths. A few wives avoided eye contact with their husbands. The video ended. I came back on screen, leaned closer. "Kendra," I said slowly, "was this your birthday present to yourself? A little romantic getaway with Eric? I'm not going to say I know what happened every night, but I sure as hell know there was only one bed." I turned my head slightly in the video. And to my sons-in-law watching this, I let the words hang. "You might want to have a talk with your wives tonight. I sure wish someone had warned me." You could feel the oxygen leaving the patio. I stared straight into the camera. No blinking. No mercy. "Kendra, if you were that miserable, you could have just asked for a divorce, but you chose this year after year. So tell me, is Eric paying you for the overtime? Or is that just a fringe benefit?" I shrugged. "Just curious." The screen faded to black. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I later heard Kendra and our daughters were crying. I wasn't sure if it was guilt or just shock. I doubted they cared about me. The best part? Eric Hopper's wife, Karen, handed them both divorce papers. Word is, she enjoyed it, slapped Kendra and called her some nasty names. Now, both Kendra and Eric were getting dumped. Facing the crowd made it worse. I wondered if they even thought about the mess they'd made. Eric stood frozen. He never thought he'd get caught, let alone in front of his wife. He figured Karen didn't suspect a thing. Then it hit him. She was my lawyer. Kendra had wrecked more than just our marriage. 5 marriages fell that night. My 3 sons-in-law told their wives not to come home until they were ready to be honest. Even with looser morals these days, some lines still matter. Even in California. Sad it took this to teach them. I drove until I got tired, pulled into a roadside motel, parked where the office could see me. I checked in, grabbed my suitcase and new phone, and went to my room. After a shower, I lay down and charged the phone. Curiosity got me. I checked for messages. There was one. Home from the party. Call me. I dialed. Karen picked up fast. "Hey, darling," I said. "How'd it go?" "Better than we hoped," Karen said. About 50 people showed up. Everyone was having a great time for hours. Kendra was loving it, playing Queen Bee. Then your daughters played the video. They never saw it coming. She chuckled. "Thanks to you, I picked up 3 new clients right there." She took a breath. Right after the video, they all realized they forgot to turn off the security cameras. The best part? All 4 of them said, "Oh crap, we're screwed," in perfect sync. The crowd heard it loud and clear. Karen laughed. Your daughter's faces said it all. And then came the clip of our cheating spouses on their little getaway. There was no denying it. When I served them, people scattered like someone yelled fire. Your sons-in-law pulled me aside, she added. Asked if I was a divorce lawyer. I said yes. I took 3 retainers before the night was over. Looks like your daughters might be facing divorces too. I left Eric at the party and drove his car home. Karen sounded pleased. Did they try to call me? I asked. After most people left, your wife found your phone ringing in the trash. That hit her harder than anything you could have said. It told them you were done. She paused. Eric just stood there, silent, thinking he was careful. Poor guy never saw it coming, I grinned. 6 months to go. I don't regret checking those security cameras. Without that, I wouldn't have met you. Maybe Kendra will settle without a fight. Still want to liquidate everything? Karen asked. Unless she buys me out, I said. With people fleeing California, it might work out better. Either way, she'll panic tomorrow when she learns you've left your firm. Karen let out a breath. I'm listing the practice tomorrow. I already told my sister and her husband you're on your way. He's eager to meet you. He still remembers you helped him land that tractor dealership. She paused again. This is just the start. I wonder if they'll still be smiling when it's done. I gave my answer and hung up. Kendra stood there, holding her husband's phone. She wanted to tell him Eric meant nothing and that their daughters were his. But it hit her. He no longer cared. This was his way of showing the world he was done. Her lies caused this. The fun, the thrill, the secret flings. None of it was worth the price now. There was no fixing it. Loya was still a small town. People forgive, but they don't forget. Whispers would follow her for years. Colin's message was clear. He cut them out of his life, at least for now. Maybe she hoped he'd forgive her again, like he always did. But this time felt different. Kendra knew she never planned this mess. It crept in slowly. Being modern, she blamed others, never herself. She told herself no one was getting hurt. After getting away with it once, she didn't stop. Eric was actually the third. She never thought she'd get caught. Busy careers kept her and Colin distracted. But her own carelessness tipped him off. Now, even her daughters were paying the price. Karen and I grew up less than 20 miles apart, but never crossed paths. I was out of school before she started. When I first booked an appointment, it was just to ask about divorce. By chance, she took my case. When I showed her the video, she froze. The man on the tape was likely her husband. We checked. Her Facebook confirmed it. That day, we both knew it was over. We talked for hours about ethics, betrayal, and what came next. We agreed to work together. It started as lawyer and client, but slowly we helped each other heal. It turned into friendship. We weren't looking for love. We just needed someone who understood. Sharing stories about growing up nearby, laughing about places we both knew, brought us closer. Last week, we admitted it had become more. We agreed to keep it simple, nothing more, until the divorces were final. 12 days ago, right after I said goodbye to Kendra, Karen called. She had just told her daughters about Eric, but they didn't believe her. Is your oldest still there? I asked. Yes, she said. Let me talk to her, I said. When her daughter picked up, I said, Your mother is my lawyer. I have proof. I didn't know who she was when I hired her. Not until she saw my video did we realize we had the same problem. Please look at the proof before you judge. Half an hour later, Karen's daughters came to my place. I showed them how the house's security system worked. Outside cameras could be turned off before entering, but inside cameras stayed on unless shut off. I wanted them to get it before watching the clip. I played the video. They saw and heard Kendra and my daughters talk openly. Then came the worst part. Hearing their father's private talk with my wife, it hit them hard. This is what your mom saw, I said. She couldn't tell you because of ethics. Right now, your dad and my wife are on their fake trip. I got people getting more proof. When Kendra returns, she'll be served. We had a long talk about vows and trust. I told them forgiveness was easy, but rebuilding trust was not. I shared how I feared my daughters were copying their mother's example. Kendra herself admitted the behavior had gone on for years. The girls understood that this wasn't just about broken vows. It shattered the way we all saw our families. Then Meadow, the younger one, said something sharp. If they really respected you, they wouldn't have done this. Later, I called Karen to share what happened. She told me, they actually opened up. Amber said you reminded her of her grandpa. Simple words, big lessons. Karen and I both realized we were longing for a simpler life, away from the noise, the rush, and the lies, the life we had left behind. The next morning, I hit the road again, back on the interstate. I planned to be in northern Utah by nightfall. I took my time, stopped to see places I'd always passed by. Strangely, I felt calm. That night, after checking into an inn, I found an email from David, my oldest son-in-law, asking me to call. He left his number. I called. "Hey, David." "Hey, Dad, glad you called," he said. "Where are you?" "On the road, licking my wounds," I said with a dry laugh. He chuckled. "I'll pass that on." "It's been wild. Kendra showed up at the office demanding to know where you were, said she wanted to patch things up. When she learned you'd retired, they called me. I told her you'd moved. She called me a liar and started asking where your checks go. I had to call security. I shouldn't have laughed, but I did," he went on. "It gets better. Carrie called. Kendra got fired. Right after Eric got served with your alienation of affection suit, too. $5 million. Kendra had to call a cab home. Now she's lawyering up," David added. "Carrie wants to come home to see our son. I told her I'm not doing anything until I know he's mine. If she doesn't like it, she can sue." "She says she hasn't cheated since you married," I said. "Not what she said in that video," he replied. "At least they're leaving you alone," I said. "Honestly, I'm enjoying this trip. Best thing I've done in years. The question is, are you really divorcing her?" David sighed. The twins grabbed their stuff and moved in with Kendra. Carrie's staying there too. No one else wants to see them. As for divorce, if the kid's not mine, I'm done. Truth is, I think I bought a lie. Carrie showed me what she wanted me to see. I've had 6 months to think. I know what I can and can't live with. Take your time, Dad. "I am," I said. "I'm starting fresh. The new place is cheaper, quieter, and I've got a small consulting gig if I want it. No ties, no suits." "You'll be missed," David said. "People here respected you. You tell them the truth, even when it hurt. Is this your new number?" "It is. Keep it between us for now. And one more thing. If Kendra asks, tell her she's free to go back to one of her other friends. She's treated me like the backup plan for years." What I didn't know. David recorded the call and sent it to my wife and daughters. Kendra wasn't happy. She thought I had no right to advise him, but my daughters started seeing the cost of living like their mother. Their husbands wanted distance. Even they were pulling away from her. Later, I called Karen. She sounded upbeat. The firm was busy. 5 new divorce cases, thanks to Kendra's birthday party. Turns out, a couple more of Kendra's old flings were exposed. Karen mentioned Kendra's firing, too. "Eric's trying to fix it," Karen said, "but the board already spoke to me. They want me back. Promoted. He'll be demoted. He used company funds for his little trips." Karen told her daughter she was moving back to South Dakota. "If you want to stay here, you'll need to live with your father or find your own place. I want a simpler life," she said. Meadow asked, "Is it because you love Colin?" "I do," Karen said, "but nothing's happened yet." Meadow smiled. "I hope it makes you feel young again." "It does," Karen said. "You're old enough now. Make better choices than we did." As I drove east, I knew Kendra would have a hard time finding another man like me. The story was too public, too raw. I wondered how long it would take her to realize what she'd lost. I rolled into town just past noon, tired as hell after 3 long days behind the wheel. Dust still caked on my truck from every back road I'd hit. I found this little diner I remembered from when I was a kid. Hadn't changed a bit. Same cracked leather booths, same faded photos on the wall, probably even the same waitress. I slid into a booth and ordered a burger, fries, and the strongest coffee they had. I was halfway through my second cup, staring out the window, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Son of a witch, is that you?" I turned, and sure enough, there was old Colin White, strutting in like he owned the place. He looked older, sure, but still tough as leather. "Uncle John," I said with a grin, getting up to shake his hand. "Man, you're a sight for sore eyes." He chuckled and slid into the booth across from me. "Good to see you too, son. You're looking good. Little road-worn, but good." I laughed. "Thanks. Been a hell of a drive." He glanced around, like checking to see if anyone else from the past might show up. "So, where's your aunt?" I asked. "Ah, she's back at the house with the girls, cleaning up, getting things ready. Place needed some love." I patched a few leaky pipes this morning. Nothing serious. Fridge is humming again. Stove's alive. Floors got scrubbed. Not bad considering how long it sat. He leaned back. You'll probably want to rip half of it out and put in all that fancy modern stuff. I shook my head. We'll see. Might keep some of the old charm. He smirked. That's the spirit. Hey, I said, waving the waitress over. Order whatever you want. Lunch is on me. Well now, he said, grinning like a kid. Guess I'll make it count. I sipped my coffee, feeling something I hadn't felt in a while, like I was really home. Before heading to my old home, I stopped at the local grocery store. Prices were way lower than I remembered. I filled 2 carts. At checkout, I realized the cashier and I had gone to school together. We caught up while she rang me out. When I pulled up to the house, it looked better than I expected. My aunt and cousins came out, helped me unload, and stayed for coffee. Once they left, I took a good look around. Uncle John was right. The place needed work. I called him for contractor names. 2 hours later, he showed up with a crew, gave me time to unpack. After the walkthrough, it was clear. Cheaper to build new. The house needed all new wiring and plumbing. The barn, though, was solid. New roof, fresh paint. I'd turn it into my shop for tractor and equipment repairs. That night, I called Karen and gave her the update. We agreed on a simple 1-floor home with a cold cellar, a crawl space, and double insulation for winter. I promised to visit her brother-in-law's dealership the next day. The next morning, I called the contractor. He said he'd bring over some plans after work. I returned the rental truck, then went to a dealership and bought a used Ford pickup with low miles, got it insured, and plated before dropping off the rental. At the bank, I made a deposit, grabbed some checks, and noticed how cheap gas was. I stopped by Karen's brother's place, who turned out to be an old classmate. He offered me a job on the spot. I told him about my consulting deal on the farm. He grinned and teased me about Karen, said he never understood her first husband. I told him I didn't either. The contractor and I struck a deal for a 4-bedroom house with a 2-car garage behind the old house. New septic, gas heating, gas stove, backup generator, open floor plan, and a mudroom with garage access. The divorce settlement would cover it. Later, I updated Karen. She was glad I'd met her brother. Just after David called. Kendra hired a private firm to find you, he said. She still thinks you two can work it out. There's nothing to fix, I said. She'd just do it again. David sighed. Isn't it funny how smart people can't see the simple things? No wonder the government's a mess. She doesn't think she did anything wrong, I said. She thinks I just need to accept it. She's only sorry she got caught. David said, I'm starting to see the same in Carrie. I might need to walk away too. If nothing changes, I will. Push for counseling, I suggested, with someone who won't just nod along. It might open her eyes. Yeah, David said. If not, I'll move on. I threw myself into barn work. Tearing out the stalls was tough, but I liked it. After years behind a desk, using my hands again felt good. Thursday night, Karen called. My girls thought you needed cheering up, she said. They told my brother about our divorces, not knowing he's known for months. Meadow told him how you found out about their dad, how they met you, and how you helped him get the dealership years ago. Turns out he owes you a lot. They found out you moved back to run the family farm. They talked about us for an hour. They were shocked he approves of us. Think they'll keep it quiet? I asked. They will now, Karen said. After what they did, they won't say a word. What did they do? I asked. They booked me a flight. Use my card, Karen laughed. I get in Friday night. They told me, start living the dream, Mom. You both deserve it. I waited with roses, feeling like a kid again. Karen arrived, simple and natural. Jeans, yellow blouse, denim jacket. She smiled. I smiled. It felt right. She hadn't eaten, so we grabbed her bag and went to Ruby Tuesdays. Her brother and sister-in-law were waiting. By the end of dinner, Karen agreed to be his lawyer when she moved back. The house looked just as I remembered. Karen lit up when she stepped inside. We had beer, played old records, Dean, Sammy, Sinatra, and sat close on the couch. We took it slow. Meanwhile, Kendra was spinning. No trace of me. No flights, rentals, cards, nothing. Even the private eyes came up empty. My lawyer kept asking for hers, but she hadn't hired one. She still thought she could fix it. She didn't even remember my relatives. They never mattered to her. The daughters were uneasy. I had always called. Now only David knew where I was. He wasn't sharing. When Carrie pressed him, he laughed. It wasn't the reaction she expected. Kendra blamed me, said I was breaking the family, said I wasn't doing what I should. What she meant was, I wasn't obeying. While she stewed, Karen and I watched the sunrise, coffee in hand. This, Karen said, gives you strength. I took her hand. No words needed. I feel like myself again, I said. Karen smiled. I saw it last night. I nodded. It's quiet here, feels real. We didn't rush, we didn't need to. I met her parents. Her dad put me to work. 4 hours later, the old tractor ran smooth. Karen watched me clean up, smiling the whole time. Mudrooms, I said, thinking of my mom. So we don't wreck the floors. Her dad chuckled. Shop would have taken a week. You fixed it today. Her mom glowed. Karen was coming home. Seeing her off Sunday hurt, but it was a good start. 2 months had passed. Things were moving. Kendra finally hired a lawyer. The court approved a 50-50th split. Karen's husband was still dragging his feet, trying to hold on to every dime. David and Carrie were in counseling, since the baby was his, making slow progress. Carrie was starting to see things differently. Little Colin was growing fast. I looked forward to seeing him again. Kendra, Faith, and Hope were all shaken. Their ex-husbands told them flat out they couldn't trust them again. I couldn't blame them. Even Kendra's bond with the girls was fractured now. I flew back to LA to test the company's new model. 2 weeks of hard testing before it could go into production. The company booked me into a Hampton Inn. That night, I walked into the hotel restaurant and spotted Amber and Karen. Amber waved me over. Mama, don't get mad, Amber said, scooting over. I invited a friend. Karen raised an eyebrow. What are you up to? Amber grinned. Meadow and I figured you'd like to see him. Karen turned, saw me, and broke into a smile. I'd grown a mustache and goatee since she last saw me. More muscle, too, thanks to farm work. Wow, Karen said. Nice surprise. I love the look. What brings you here? Well, dinner with my girlfriend and her daughter for starters, I said, winking. Amber, thanks for setting me up. Right then, Meadow arrived. Hope I'm not late, she said, sliding in. Work ran long. Over dinner, I explained the project. The new tractor would run on natural gas. If it passed testing, farmers could build cheap refill stations on their land. Cleaner, cheaper, more efficient. It could change the market. Just before dessert, Amber asked, Are you two hoping to settle in South Dakota before school starts? Karen nodded. That's the plan. Amber leaned in. How far is Vermilion from the farm? About 30 miles, Karen said. Amber grinned. Good. I got into the MBA program at USD. Can I live with you? Otherwise, I'll stay with Uncle Joseph. It's cheap and close to home. Karen blinked back tears. I reached across and took her hand. We hoped you'd want to, I said. The new 4-bedroom house will be done next month. Pick your room colors. You planned for us? Meadow asked. Karen nodded. We hoped. But we wanted you to choose. If I pushed, you'd blame Colin. How'd you figure that? Amber asked. Colin asked if I trusted you to make your own choices, Karen said. I said yes. Then let them, I added. Your bond with your mom's stronger than with your dad. Amber studied me. That first night, you sized us up. You knew we'd come, didn't you? I shrugged. Amber, I knew you'd go for more schooling. Meadow was the question, but when she brought up respect, I knew. Karen smiled. The hardest part was trusting it would all work out. We finished dinner, Karen and I heading to a movie. Amber and Meadow went home. As we walked out, I caught Kendra's car pulling into the lot. She didn't recognize me at first. By the time she did, we were gone. Working on the barn had done me good. The pot belly was gone. I'd hardened up, looked younger, felt it too. I was peeling back layers I didn't know I'd buried. After the movie, I dropped Karen off and returned to the hotel, left a wake-up call for the morning. Security waved me in for the plant tour. This was the part I loved, seeing the finished machine, ready to prove itself. By the time the rest of the team showed up, I was already deep into testing. I'd found a couple of small issues, rerouted the feed line away from the heat, and documented everything for the report. When they saw me, they were surprised. And not just by the tractor, I looked different, healthier, stronger. The president showed up while I was working, watching me haul and push heavy loads through the mud bed. The machine handled like a dream. He laughed when he saw me. Jeans, white t-shirt, and a backwards ball cap, driving like I owned the thing. Colin, he said, shaking his head, you're still the man. You could probably flip this thing on its head if you tried. He leaned on the fence. So first thoughts? I wiped the sweat off and grinned. If it survives me, it's one of the best we've built. Few small tweaks, but it's running smooth. Plus, it's burning less fuel than diesel. He stepped forward, offering a handshake. Good to see you again, Pete. He smiled. We'd take you back in a second. But looking at you, I get why you left. Where'd you find the fountain of youth? He didn't know the trick. I always tested machines, like I did my first truck. Treat it like junk until it proves it isn't. By day's end, I leaned back against the tractor. It held up. 1 down, 9 to go. It was pushing 8 by the time I dragged myself back to the hotel. I looked like hell, covered in dry mud from boots to ball cap. I spotted Carrie and David sitting in the lobby, Carrie rocking little Colin in her arms. Carrie caught sight of me first and stood up, walking straight over. Hey, Dad, she said, giving me a once-over. You're looking rough. You got time to talk or you beat? I glanced at David, who gave me a little nod like we need this. Yeah, I said, brushing mud off my sleeve. But let me scrub the dirt off first. David stood and came over. I waved toward the elevators. You two want to chill here or come up to the suite? It's got a kitchen. We can order up or eat down here. Doesn't matter to me. Carrie shifted little Colin on her hip. Suite sounds good. We'll order while you clean up. We need to talk, like, really talk. So up we went. They got busy with room service while I hit the shower. As I was buttoning up a fresh shirt, my phone buzzed. Karen. I told her what was up, promised I'd call her back once this was done. Back in the living room, I cracked open the bottle of Crown Royal I brought along, poured us each a glass. The kids wanted soda, so I gave them just a splash, stirred it with my finger. Carrie didn't waste time. Dad, she started, eyes fixed on the glass in her hand. David and we've been through some serious crap the last couple months. What you caught on that recording, it blew up everything. I actually moved back home last week. David gave a small nod. Carrie went on. Mom's been talking about her other relationships for years. We honestly thought you knew, like it was some open marriage thing you two had worked out. She made it sound like you were fine with it, like you didn't care anymore. I clenched my jaw, but kept my voice steady. I didn't know, Carrie sighed. Yeah, figured. Truth is, she sold us that story about you two having different drives, different needs. I was buying it till all this, David chimed in, looking like he'd aged 5 years. We were damn near done, Mr. Walker. Couldn't get past it. Carrie even took a polygraph. Neither of us trusted where we were headed. I nodded. Look, I hope you both know you've been dealt a bad hand here. That's going to take time to work through, but if you're both serious about fixing it, you've got a shot. Just don't try to patch it up with bullshit. Carrie cracked a small, sad smile. I reached over and took little Colin into my arms. The kid settled against my shoulder, soft as can be. David, I said, grab my phone. Take a picture for me, will you? He did without a word. Carrie kept going. I realized I was acting like Mom, justifying everything, thinking it was normal. Turns out, it's not. I didn't even see it till I stopped to really think. I hate it. It's like I didn't even know who I was becoming. David spoke up, voice low. I'm starting to see someone different too. And I think we've got more than just a slim chance to make this work. I leaned back, bouncing Colin gently. It takes work and honesty. And sometimes someone outside the family to help sort the mess. Don't be too proud for that. I paused. Your mom? She let other people, other voices, screw with her head till she threw out everything we built like it was trash. And yeah, I'm sure she's still blaming me. Carrie snorted. She is. I told my sisters flat out. I'm done listening to Mom twist this crap to make herself feel better. I got a marriage I'm not ready to lose. We fought about it. I told them when they finally pull their heads out of their A, then maybe we can talk. David chuckled nervously. Room service knocked. We let them in, plates clattering on the table. Over dinner, Carrie asked, You on some diet or something? You're looking fit. I laughed. Nah, just been working with my hands again, not sitting behind some desk, wasting away. Feels good. By 10, they were getting ready to leave. Carrie hugged me tight and whispered, I like this version of you, Dad. I chuckled. Yeah, well, turns out there was more of me left than I thought. I just needed the old life to clear out so I could find it. Later that night, I texted Karen to see if she was still up. She was, so I called and told her about the day. People say time heals all wounds. It doesn't. It just teaches you to live with them. Faith and Hope were learning that the hard way. Tuesday night around 7, I walked into the hotel lobby. There they were, my 2 youngest, waiting for me. First thought, Kendra had sent them. I was right. Back in my suite, they went straight at me, accusing me of abandoning their mother. In their eyes, I was the coward, not her. They admitted their marriages were over. Just like mine, their husbands couldn't handle them being modern women, as they put it. I'd had enough. I called security. The security guys walked in, took one look, and asked, "You want them out, sir?" I nodded. "Out the back, please." Faith and Hope left crying, humiliated. As they went, security told them not to return. I heard one guard mutter, "We don't need that kind of company in here." I called Karen later. She couldn't stop laughing. "They'll be thinking about that one for a while," she said. "Without love, someone always pays one way or another. Mind if I tell Amber and Meadow?" "Go ahead," I said. "Might as well light the fuse." A couple of hours later, Carrie called. "Well done, Dad," she said. "They came here bawling. It finally hit them. Their choices stink just like everyone else's." "They didn't give me a chance to explain," I said. "Didn't want one. All they cared about was making sure I was the villain." "They'll see it," Carrie said. "David and I did. He actually liked how you handled it. We're starting to get it now. How did Mom convince us it was all okay? Faith and Hope are hurting bad. It'll take time." I kept it simple. "Carrie, did you ever stop to think about what it did to me, or did you only think about yourselves?" Carrie went quiet. Then she said, "Mom painted it all in soft colors, made everything seem fine. We couldn't see the truth until it all blew up." That's how most people live, Carrie. They never question what's right in front of them. She asked, "What's different about you?" "You're learning it now," I said. "It's called thinking. Welcome to my world. Sorry you had to take the hard road here." The next night, I went to Karen's for dinner. Amber and Meadow wanted to start planning the move. Over dinner, I shared what Carrie had told me. Afterward, we did the dishes together. I washed, the girls dried. Felt like old times. Until they caught Karen and me stealing a kiss. Amber grinned. "Busted!" Meadow rolled her eyes. "You two are worse than teenagers." We all laughed. It felt like life again. It was close to 8 when Karen and I settled into a quiet table at this small restaurant down by the pier. Candlelight, the smell of fresh seafood, soft waves outside, the kind of night you try to make special. We were sipping our drinks, just getting comfortable, when I caught the unmistakable sight of the twins walking in. Before I could duck or pretend I didn't see them, the host showed up at our table. "Excuse me," he said, looking a little nervous. "Your daughters noticed you missed their wave. They were wondering if you'd mind them joining you." I hesitated. Truth was, I wasn't sure I wanted them anywhere near this dinner. Karen gave me a soft nudge under the table. "Say yes," she whispered. "You may not like them right now, but you still love them. They're your girls." I let out a breath. She wasn't wrong. "Yeah," I said, standing up. "Sure, bring them over." I slid into the booth beside Karen. A minute later, Faith and Hope walked over. You could see it all on their faces. Nerves, regret, stubbornness still hanging on. They sat down like kids waiting for the principal. I didn't sugarcoat it. "Faith, Hope, this is Karen. She's not just my lawyer, she's my girlfriend. If you're here to tear into me again, just save it and walk out now." Faith glanced at Hope, then back at me. "No, Dad, we deserve that." She rubbed the back of her neck, looking everywhere but at me. "We had a long talk with Carrie Tuesday night. She didn't hold back. Kind of kicked our A, honestly." Hope nodded. "Yeah, we went over there thinking she'd back us up. Instead, she wrecked us. Laid it all out, told us how we looked, how we acted, how ugly it all was." Faith's eyes started to well up. "She said we were basically being paid off like hookers. Not for Zex, but for playing along, living Mom's version of the story, getting perks for staying blind." Hope added, "And the worst part, we realized she was right. We weren't even surviving like people who gotta do what they gotta do. We did it because it was fun, because we thought we were untouchable. It hit different after Carrie said it." Faith leaned forward, voice lower. "When we got home, we cornered Mom. It blew up fast. She said we'd been brainwashed by your conservative bullcrap." Hope scoffed. She straight up said, "So what if people get hurt? They should toughen up. The only crime is getting caught." She went on about how even politicians do worse and walk away clean. Faith shook her head. "She's got no shame, Dad, still doesn't. But we finally saw it for what it is. We're teachers. We tell kids right from wrong every damn day, but we've been living like none of it applied to us." Hope took a breath. "So, we found a place, a small 2-bedroom, furnished near the school, cheap enough. We signed a 6-month lease. Figured it's time to figure out who we are without Mom whispering in our ears." Faith's voice cracked a little. "We're moving in tomorrow. Mom's too busy schmoozing at some political thing anyway. When we saw you tonight, we knew we had to say something. We were wrong about all of it, about you." Hope nodded. "And we get why you didn't confront us. It would have just been 4 against 1. You knew we had to see it for ourselves." I took a deep breath. "Sometimes the only way through is letting people fall on their own," I said quietly. "Truth is, you were already forgiven. I saw how much of your mess was just you following your mother's lead. Kendra, I'll forgive, but I'll never trust her again." I slid my phone across the table. "Put your numbers in, and take mine." They both did without hesitation. Hope glanced at the screen. "Dad, this is a South Dakota number?" I smirked. "Yeah, moved back to the farm." Faith lit up like a kid. "No way, Grandpa's farm?" Karen raised an eyebrow. "You two know the place?" Hope laughed. "Know it? We lived there every summer growing up. Learned to drive on Grandpa's old tractor. Dad made sure we went every year till we got too cool for it in high school." Faith added, "We never even got a single call from Mom while we were there. Grandma used to say Mom was the shallowest woman she ever met." Karen chuckled. "I can believe that." Faith leaned in. "So, Dad, what brings you to town? And Karen, can we get your number too? Just in case." Dinner shifted. It wasn't heavy anymore. It felt like family. We laughed, shared stories, talked about the new house Karen and I were building. Turns out the twins were curious about Karen's daughters too. Then, right in the middle of dessert, Hope's phone buzzed. She read the text out loud. "Having dinner with Dad and his girlfriend Karen. Faith and I will swing by later to explain everything." Later that night, Karen and I walked the pier, just taking it in. "I'm surprised," she said. "You stepping back forced them to sort it out themselves." "My dad always said, give someone enough rope, they'll hang themselves," I replied. If I'd stayed, it would have been 4 against 1. Instead, they turned on each other. Their own sense of right and wrong did the work. Karen nodded. "Evil only works if someone's willing to carry it out. Most people just blame others. You were the scapegoat." "I couldn't go along with it," I said. "I wouldn't." "That's what makes you solid," she said. "You don't bend just because you're outnumbered." Meanwhile, Kendra came home after a long political event wanting to patch things up with the twins. Their last argument had been ugly. Too much of their father's backbone showing through, and she couldn't stand it. She tossed her purse on the counter and spotted 2 keys and a note. "We've moved out. We don't like who we've become. Good luck. We blocked your number. Faith and Hope." Later, Carrie found her staring at it. "I haven't heard from them since Tuesday," Carrie said. "Since Dad had security toss them out of the Hampton." Kendra turned. "He threw them out? Why?" "They went after him hard, Mom. Called him a coward. Blamed him for everything. He listened for a bit, then said, 'I'm done,' and called security." Carrie smirked. "Security thought they were hookers. Showed them the back door." "That's not funny," Kendra said, shaken. "When they showed up crying, they told me everything," Carrie said. "Want to know what I told them?" Kendra hesitated. "Maybe," Carrie shrugged. "I said, when those men were whining and dining you, you weren't special. You were just getting paid early." Kendra's face went blank. Tears followed. She knew. She saw it plain. In that moment, she realized the truth. She would never face Colin again. Not as an equal, not as a partner. What Carrie said was his truth, and it broke them all. No one could spin it. It was simple. Those romantic weekends with her friends with benefits were nothing more than paid services. Without saying it, Colin had already told the world, and left her to sit with it. It took her weeks to fully process it. The truth wasn't that he left her. It was that she had left him long ago by who she'd become. The twins were proof of that. No man could stay after seeing it for what it was. If the truth got out, she was done, and Colin knew it. Yet by walking away, he left her with something she never gave him, her dignity. Now, even her daughters were pulling away. Kendra realized it too late. There was no scapegoat left. She looked around the house. It felt too big, too empty, too full of reminders. She'd tell herself she was selling it for practical reasons, but she knew better. Karen and I returned to her house after a night out. A few drinks, a little dancing. We passed out on the couch without a care. Amber and Meadow didn't waste the moment. They snapped a few photos and sent them straight to Faith and Hope. Minutes later, the phone rang. The 4 of them were already planning something. One even tossed a blanket over us like kids tucking in their parents. I woke up to find an angel asleep in my arms. Karen looked peaceful. I glanced at my phone. Past 7 a.m., We'd crashed around 1. Meadow sat in a chair, watching us. I guess I better get used to this, she said with a grin. Mom looks happy. I'll make coffee. About an hour later, the 4 of us sat around the kitchen table, sipping coffee, just talking. Then the girls dropped a surprise. By the way, Karen said, acting casual, our side of the family's coming this afternoon for a little get-together. Karen and I jumped into action. I checked the grill, topped off the propane. She got dressed and threw together a grocery list. We stopped by my suite so I could shower and clean up, then headed to the grocery store. As we were walking in, Kendra was walking out. Kendra stopped right in front of me, arms crossed, trying to sound calm, but looking like hell. Colin, let the girls know I'm selling the house, she said flatly. If they want anything, Carrie still has a key. Since none of them are speaking to me, they can swing by while I'm at work and grab whatever. Same goes for you. I didn't even flinch. I'll pass it along, I said. Karen will handle anything for me. I'm giving her power of attorney. I met her eyes. And as for me, I already took what mattered when I left. I'm only in town for another 6 days. Kendra gave a little nod, like she wasn't sure if she wanted to say more or just walk away. In the end, she turned and left, heels clicking down the aisle like nothing was wrong. Karen and I stood there for a second before pushing the cart down the next aisle. Awkward, Karen muttered under her breath. We kept shopping, both of us quiet until I broke the silence. Something's off with her, I said. She's not just cold. She looked rattled. You think it's the twins moving out? Karen asked. I shook my head. Nah, she's used to being alone when the girls were off doing their thing. This is different. She loves that house. Selling it? That's not like her. Something hit her harder than she's letting on. Karen glanced over at me. You still care what happens to her? I sighed. Not like that, but I know her, and I know when she's hiding something. During the barbecue, Karen and I found out what the twins had written to their mother and what Carrie said afterward. All 5 girls got along like they'd known each other forever. David and I mostly watched from the sidelines while the women caught up. Amber and Meadow couldn't get enough of a little Colin. Later, I told my daughters about the run-in with their mother at the grocery store. David smirked. I called dibs on the big plasma TV. Carrie just rolled her eyes. I couldn't help but laugh. The first 2 family get-togethers had gone better than I could have hoped. After the girls left and we finished cleaning up, Karen and I settled on the porch with a couple of cold beers. So, Amber said, faith and hope cut ties with your ex, at least for now, to figure out who they are without her. Karen frowned. Why would they do that? They followed their mother's lead, I said. Got caught up with friends with benefits. Cost them both their marriages. It took me leaving Kendra for them to see it. Last week, they showed up ready to blame me. I threw them out. Later, Carrie told them straight. When your friends with benefits were whining and dining you, you were being paid in advance. Amber blinked. Seriously? David spoke gently. Your mother and I were taught early. It's not just about how you see yourself. It's about how others see you. People read your actions, not your intentions. Karen leaned against me. Exactly. That's why Colin's choices hit harder than anything he said. The twins realized they needed to step back and figure out who they really are. I'm proud of them. They've started healing, I added, because they got honest. The words sank in. No one said much for a moment, then Amber grinned. You're going to make a great dad. Karen lost it, laughing and crying all at once. The rest of the week was quiet. Karen and I made the most of the time. The new tractor passed every test. The president was thrilled. I called it beta. Before I left, we had one last family gathering. The twins grew closer to Karen's daughters. Karen barely let go of little Colin. Karen and Eric settled their divorce. She offered him the house. He took it, hoping to win back the girls. I flew home the last week of August. The new house stood ready, the old one torn down. The barn was fixed up, the driveway rebuilt. Uncle John drove me to the airport. I'd returned driving a U-Haul. Karen sold her practice. Her associate would finish the divorce. Deliveries kept coming to the farm. Uncle John helped set up the furniture. The extras went to Goodwill. Neighbors pitched in. That Friday, Karen met me at the airport with Amber and Meadow. I kissed her, dropped to one knee, and proposed. The girls filmed the whole thing. Amber and Meadow had arranged a celebration dinner. All 5 daughters and David showed up. We danced most of the night. At Karen's house afterward, Meadow stopped us. Wait in the car. They came back with a bag. Suites booked, Amber grinned. You're not coming home till Monday. At the hotel, we found champagne, chocolates, and a note. Congrats from your 5 daughters. We didn't leave all weekend. Monday, we picked up the U-Haul. Why is it so big? I asked. Karen smiled. You'll see. Faith and Hope showed up later. We're moving east, Faith said. We got hired near Vermilion. Karen gave them some furniture. We loaded the truck with what they took from Kendra's house. They rented a 3-bedroom, so Amber would have a place during storms. I dropped the suit against Eric after he agreed to cover the court costs. By late September, Karen and I finalized the divorces. On the last Saturday of October, we married with the whole family there. Carrie and David came with little Colin. Then Karen surprised everyone. To my husband and to all of you, we're expecting in May. We don't know yet if it's a boy or girl.